If you ever wanted to know how to spend a Saturday morning, go to your local recycle center for compost. Let's go. What's going on, my plant peoples? I am the ADHD gardener, where I use gardening, houseplants, and humor as a form of mental health therapy, and it is officially springtime. So we are at our local recycling center, and they have a huge compost pile, and it is free. $0. The only caveat is that you have to kind of pick it up yourself. Us gardeners are always using compost, and it can be expensive, especially if you have a large sized garden. So I would suggest going to your local township, going to your local municipal area, see if they have a recycling center, see if they have a compost pile. You never know. Some towns really have just compost piles, especially if you're in a rural area. My dad is over there with the sifter, and he's getting compost for his own garden, but he wants to sift it out first. And ideally, that's kind of what you want to do, but I mean, sometimes it's not really feasible. So you get what you can get.
I'm only wanting to sift part of it, only what I'm going to use for certain specific garden buckets or my square foot system, gardening bed.
Ooh, and why are you wearing a mask?
Just for the mold spores on this pile.
That's a big pile.
Yes. So we don't want to necessarily get rid of this bulky stuff, because we want it to be, if you got big containers, like some of these big containers, you want it to break down over time. So you don't want it that fine necessarily in every situation.
True that. I guess it just depends on what you're going to be using the compost for.
Yes.
All right. I'll show you guys in another video how my dad made that sifter, because that thing is actually collapsible, and he could bring that with him anywhere he goes. So every time we go to the compost pile, he's always bringing his sifter. The thick compost that's not really broken down yet, you can use that for mulch. You can use that on your garden beds, you can use that in your compost pile, or you can use that in the base of your shrubs and trees. Oh, this is some really good stuff. Now, this is what it looks like when it's been sifted. It is a lot more finer, and you can use this, basically anywhere. Now, depending on the town that you live in, you don't really know exactly what kind of materials that they're using for this compost. They could be collecting material that has been sprayed with chemicals or pesticides. So you really have to check out and find out from that recycling center what exactly are they putting in their, in their compost pile. At the same time, beggars can't be choosy, and being that it is free, I'm gonna be grabbing it and working with it. I'm just gonna be amending the compost over time. I wonder if you can see behind me, but there are a bunch of different compost piles in my recycling center, and a lot of them are in different stages. The first pile is just basically when they first come in and start dumping all the materials. They must be moving it around, but they have multiple piles all up in this area. Each town has different rules and regulations on what are they picking up, for the compost pile. So luckily in my town, they actually pick up all the leftover trees that fall, all spring cleaning, all fall cleaning, all the stuff that people generally put out on bulk, fallen trees, fallen shrubs, tree limbs, tree branches, a lot of leaves, all of it comes to this compost pile. Now, I want to say that it has not been sprayed by anything, because this is just being picked up through the town.
The compost, you don't want it to exceed 140, 160 degrees temperature, because it starts to kill off the beneficial bacteria.
Really?
Yeah, so you have to, if it's too hot, you have to water it, turn it, do whatever, uncover it, whatever you have to do.
Being that I have some back issues, I'm going to put the bucket right here and let the pile do all the work for me. I am not going to be shoveling. What I'm going to do is actually pick from the top and let it fall right into the bucket. There you go, or you could even use your hand like that.
And then make it light so it's manageable.
I'm very fortunate to have the access to a compost pile. I may be physically limited, but that is why we get help. Lots of help. I'm very fortunate and blessed to get a lot of people helping me when it comes to the laborious, strenuous parts. Now, if your town does not have a recycle center where they have free compost at your disposal, then there are other options that you can get for free compost, or even some cheap compost. Now, what I have here is a worm bin. This is not going to be turning out into compost. However, this is going to be worm castings, which is just another form of nutrition for your, for the soil. All you do is take your food scraps and then you put it in your worm bin. The only cost to this worm bin is the materials for the worm bin, which, if you saw my video on this was really, really cheap to make. And the only other cost would be the worms. Ideally, you want compost along with worm castings together, but something is better than nothing. Or maybe they do have one, but they do not have a compost pile. you can always start your own. Now I have multiple compost piles around my property. I have one right here, and I also have one by the chicken coop. I do not mess with the compost, being that it's very laborious for my back. This is Jose's department, so he messes with all that. Now what you see here is actually all bedding material from my chickens. This has not been broken down yet, but this is another way of getting free compost just by using the materials that I have on hand. This eventually will also get broken down over a long period of time. I know you did not just peck me, bruh. I know you didn't. Not cool. All the materials you would need for a normal compost pile, you can actually find around in your area for free. You can actually just find some grass clippings if you cut your lawn. If your neighbors have lawns, ask for their grass clippings. If it's fall time, collect the leaves. I have bags of leaves that I've collected from fall time just waiting for my compost pile. Let's say you have a compost pile, but you don't have enough food scraps to make this compost pile happen. That's okay. You can go around your local areas, your local restaurants and cafes, and go ask them, strike a deal with them, and see if you can collect their food scraps. I mean, they were going to throw it away anyway. Let them know what you're doing with the compost pile. Let them know that you're gardening, and that would be a free source. Every Sunday, I go to a cafe that's willing to work with me so I can go over there and collect their food scraps. Now, to sweeten the deal even more and to make their life more easier, remember, they are doing you a favor by setting aside their food scraps. So I brought a garbage can for them, and I go every week and swap out the plastic bags. They put their food scraps in the garbage can for me to collect, and they feel good knowing that they're actually doing something good with their food scraps and it's not going to waste. So we're just gonna go fill up our trucks with a bunch of compost and let's get gardening. It is springtime and we have a lot to do and a lot to prepare for, and it all starts with compost.
Okay, here, then I have to dump it. Or you want to make multiple trips. I'd rather make one big hefty trip, not multiple trips. You know, I save time and travel and all that stuff. See, just dump them.
Yeah, luckily Dad has a pickup truck, so we are using a bunch of buckets and containers to fill them all up.
And eventually...
Free labor, as my dad would say when I was younger. Free labor. Not only does this place have a compost pile, they also have a recycling center. So if you ever need a plastic bottles for a garden project or for any project for that matter, you can go find it at your local recycle center, and chances are it will be free. $0, and that's exactly what we're going for. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy this video and you want to show me some love, then don't forget to smash that like button. I really appreciate it. Also, if you haven't already, then consider subscribing. I drop a video every week and then some in between. And last but not least, you can catch me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on there all the time. You can drop me a message. I post a lot of memes and a lot of DIY projects and behind the scenes of my videos. As usual, we both are going to be planting our happiness one plant at a time, one day at a time. Until the next episode, you guys, peace and love.